Hi, this session is on angles and parallel lines and the relationships that we see when this happens. Before we start this topic, let's just revise a few other important skills that you need to know to understand how all of this works. Okay, with each of these, can you work out what the unknown variable x is? Try and do it first. If you have forgotten, then continue watching, but just pause it and try and work it out yourself. Now with the first one, we'll just change our color. With the first one, we can see that we have a straight line. And we know a straight line is really two lines and one has traveled away from the other to form a straight line. And this is what we call a straight line or 180 degrees. And we sort of know this by sunrise, okay? So when you see something like that, it's telling you that the line is at 180 degrees. So that means I know that x plus something, x plus 40 has to equal 180. So when you're doing this, it's good to write an equation to show some working out. So we know that x plus 40 degrees has to add up to 180. And then we just solve the equation. And we end up with x equals 180 minus 40. And yes, you could have done this mentally. And 180 minus 40 is just 140 degrees. And so this angle in here has to be 140 because these two, 140 and 40, add up to sunrise, add up to 180. This one down here, what angle are they showing you? We can see this corner part here, that is telling you it's 90 degrees. So that means 50 plus x has to add up to 90 degrees. We'll write an equation, so x plus 50 has to equal, this time, 90 degrees. And we can see how it's halfway. If I had 180, I would have a straight line. So this line is halfway. So solve this, we minus 50 on both sides. So x equals 90 minus 50. And so x will equal 40 degrees. So this angle in here, where x is, has to be 40. And 50 plus 40 gives us our 90 degree angle. And the last one, you notice that we've got to find the angle x, and this angle that's 70 and this angle that's 60, they all make what? A full circle. And we know a full circle, which we call a revolution, adds up to 360. So all of these three angles, if we got 70 plus 60 plus x, all have to add up to, I'll squeeze it in, 360. And this equation is easy to solve. We can first add 70 plus 60, which is 130, plus x equals 360. And now we just have to minus 130 on both sides. So x will be 360 minus 130. And if you can work that out, which leaves us with 230 degrees. So I'll just squeeze it up here so you can see. So x has to equal 230 degrees. So this angle here where x is 230. Now sometimes the diagrams I draw are not to scale because we can see this angle here, if it was 230, it might be a little bit bigger than that, okay? So just remember that. So the next part of this lesson, that was just some revision, is this. When we have two parallel lines, so we know parallel lines are two lines that never meet. Now mine may not look parallel, but imagine they are perfectly straight. Actually, it looks pretty bad. I'll try again. And it's not even much better, but that'll do. So imagine they're parallel, and I've got these two parallel lines, they'll never meet, and I decide to get another line and cut through them. So imagine that it's a straight line, and it's cutting through these two parallel lines. This line here is what we call the transversal. Transversal. So it's a funny keyword, but if you come across it, that's all it means. It's a line that cuts through two parallel lines. Okay? Now when this happens, there are certain properties that we need to remember and certain things that happen, and no matter what the line looks like. So for example, if I drew two more parallel lines down here and I had another transversal cutting through, just say this way on a sharper angle, okay, this has the same properties as this one here, and we're going to explore that. So the first one we'll be looking at are alternate angles, okay? And alternate angles, this states that these angles are equal. But we have to be able to identify when we see alternate angles. And this is what it is. I'll use a different color. If I have, for example, if I told you the angle in here was 30 degrees, can you see how this line here and that the transversal line makes an angle, 30 degrees? If I told you that, then alternate angles means that this angle down here will also be 30 degrees. It will always be the same as that one there. Okay, so the way I remember is we have one on the inside and one on they're both on the inside, sorry. Both inside the parallel lines, but one on this side and one on that side. It's sort of, I guess, on opposite sides, but both inside. Another way for you to identify this is what some people do is if you highlight this angle here, I'll do it in green, and you go down to this one, can you see how it makes a Z shape? Okay. That's another way to know if they're alternate or not. But it's something you have to sort of remember. And that is, they're both on the inside, but on either side. So that means they are equal. Let's try another. And remember, sometimes diagrams can look like this. There are my two parallel lines. And I'll do my transversal that way. So if you have this on your paper and you're getting confused, just rotate your paper. So if I tell you this angle in here, if I told you in there, I'll do it over here so you can see, is 20 degrees. So the angle in here is 20 degrees. And I asked you, okay, what's the angle over here if I call it X? Well, are these two alternate angles? Yes, they are. They're both on the inside, one on this side and one on that side. So I would say X is equal to 20 because I know they are alternate. And that's it for alternate angles. Now, corresponding angles, okay, these angles are also equal. So I'll put an equal sign there saying corresponding angles are equal. So let's draw once again, draw two parallel lines, and I'll draw a transversal cutting through. Now, with corresponding angles, this is what happens. If I had an angle here, just say I called it angle A in there, and if I had another angle over here, and I told you that one in there was 30 degrees, I'll squeeze in 30. These two angles are corresponding, which means these two angles are equal. So I would say A equals 30 degrees. Okay, and the way I remember this is I can see that both of these angles have to be on the same side, either on this side or this side here. And then how I remember is I say there's one on the inside and then one on the outside, and they're corresponding. Another way that people remember is they draw an F for this one. So if I outline my angles and I go up this way and there's my other angle, can you see how it's an upside down F? Okay, that's another way to know if they're corresponding. But just remember, one on the inside and one on the outside. So let's look at another example. So there are my two parallel lines and a transversal is cutting through. So if I have an angle, let's try another side. If I have an angle over here and I call that A, and I put an angle here that's 50 degrees, are they corresponding? Yes, they are, because we can see that we have one on the inside and one on the outside, and they're both on the same side. So I would say A simply equals 50 degrees. And that's pretty much it. If you have a look, if I did using the same diagram, if I said to you, okay, if I have, let's see, if I have, well, we can also see that they're vertically opposite. So if I put A here, because I know that's another angle we forgot to look at, and that's vertically opposite angles. We can see how there's a cross there or an X, so A equals A. So if that's A over here, where is its corresponding angle going to be? It's going to be over here. One on the inside, one on the outside. So that's also A. Okay? So you can see how there are, in this case, there are now two pairs of corresponding angles. With alternate angles, so remember, if we go back to alternate angles, okay, we can have one on the inside, one on the outside. Oh, sorry, they're both on the inside, but one on this side, one on that side, and also one on that side and one on that side. Okay, so that also can have, I guess, two pairs. Now this might confuse you, but we can actually put more corresponding angles. For example, if I have an angle here, if I call it angle, let's say, angle B, okay? If one's on the outside and I put one on the inside over here, that's also going to be angle B. They're also corresponding. So if I put angle B here as well, on the outside over here, it's also corresponding. So there are quite a few corresponding angles. But you might start noticing a pattern, okay, with this. And we'll look at this more later on. Now this is pretty much the last one, the last new thing you have to learn for this session, and it's probably the hardest one because they don't equal each other. Cointerior angles add to 180. So let's see what cointerior angles look like. So I'll do my two parallel lines and my transversal cutting through. Now cointerior angles look like this. They're both on the inside, like alternate angles, but they're on the same side. Okay, so these two angles here, that one there and that one there, they are cointerior. And if I did some more on the other side, well, this angle here, that's green, and this angle down here, that's green, they are also cointerior. So that one plus that one will add up to 180. So let's do an example with some actual degrees. So there's my two parallel lines. That's cutting through. All right, so if I told you that this angle here was 30 degrees, and I asked you to tell me what this angle down here is, x. So we have a look, we can see they are not alternate. They're both on the inside, but, they're both on the inside, but one has to be on the other side. So we can see they're on the same side, so yes, they are cointerior. But we don't say x equals 30. What we say is, we know that x plus 30 add up to 180. And we just go x equals 180 minus 30. So x equals 50 degrees. So this angle over here would be 50 degrees. And that's it. Now, some other things I want to point out. So we have looked at alternate angles, we have looked at corresponding angles, and we have looked at cointerior. And before we looked at these angles, we have also looked at vertically opposite. So vertically opposite, when you've got two lines crossing each other, sort of forming an X. So if I have A here, then its opposite angle, vertically opposite angle, would be over here. So that's also going to be A. So these, when we have a diagram like this, there are also vertically opposite angles. So if this angle here is B, then this is also B. And the same thing down here. It'll be, these angles here will equal the angles down here. So if that's A there, it's going to be A there. If that's B here, it's going to be B here. And if that's A down there, that's A there, that's B, that's B. So that's another trick. All the angles, if you figure out all the angles up here, they're going to look exactly the same down here because the line is cutting through on the same angle with this parallel line and also this one. So basically, and the other thing is, before I forget, if we just quickly do another example or another diagram, don't forget also there are heaps of sunrises. So this angle here and that one there will add up to 180. Also, for example, these two angles, that one there and that one there, add up to 180. And that means this angle here, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, all these angles make a circle. So all these angles will add up to 360. And the same thing down here, okay? For example, this angle here and that one there, they make sunrise with this line here. And the same thing on this side, and they all add up to 180. So there's heaps of things happening. And so now, if you're given one angle, you can work out all the rest in the whole thing. You ready? Let's try it. So if the question said, all right, here is 20 degrees, and they want you to work out A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So when you have two parallel lines and a transversal, there are always 8 angles if you've got one transversal. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 angles. Because we know one of them is 20, we can work out every single other one. You ready? Now there's heaps of ways of doing this. I want you to have a go first, and then I'll do it my way and see if you've got the same answers. So the first thing I notice is, well, 20 degrees and C are vertically opposite. So C has to equal 20. So I'm going to put 20 here. Done. I also notice that, I could change my color. I also notice that 20 degrees, or now over here that was C, is corresponding to G. One on the inside, one on the outside. So they're corresponding. That means G is also 20 degrees. So G equals 20. Another thing is, if I go back to my C, which is 20 degrees, it is alternate to D. They're both inside the parallel lines, but one on this side and one on that side. So D is also 20 degrees. So D equals, well, 20 degrees. Okay, my next thing that I can see, so I've looked at vertically opposite angles, I've looked at corresponding, I've looked at alternate. What else can you see? Well, I can see that E and A are corresponding, but the problem is I don't know what E is or A is to work it out. So the next thing I'm going to do is, well, I can use my sunrises. I know that 20 plus A has to equal 180, or 20 plus B has to equal 180. I also know that 20 plus E has to equal 180. So there's so many ways I can do this, but I'm going to use this one. You ready? Just to practice our cointerior. I know D and angle B, which D is 20, have to add up to what? 180. So I'm going to say, well, I know that, I'll do some working out down here. To work out B, I know that B plus, because D is 20, I'll put 20, has to add up to 180. And I'll end up with B equals 180 minus 20. So B will have to equal 160 degrees. So now instead of B here, I am putting 160. And guess what? That means everything else that hasn't been marked off is going to be 160. Because have a look. If that's 160 here, that means A is vertically opposite. So A is going to be 160. If that's 160 out here, that means its corresponding angle is E. One on the inside, one on the outside. So E is also 160. And now F is vertically opposite to 160. So F is also 160. And have a look at that, we're done. And you can see that it's the same thing up here and the same thing down here. 20, 160. 20, 160. Okay? And then the same thing down here. 160 and 20, 160 and 20. And we found all of that by using only one angle. Okay, so you may have an exam question like that, and that's how easy it is. So I'll find a few questions to practice with. Can you work out what all of these unknown variables are? So what is A, what is B in this one, angle B, and what is angle A down here? Okay? And I'll put the answers up for you, but you should be able to work these out. And can you also label what type of angle you see? Either alternate, corresponding, cointerior. It's one of those three. So these are the answers you should have come up with. First one, they were corresponding. One on the inside, one on the outside. Second one, they were alternate. They're both on the inside of the parallel lines, but opposite sides. And the third one, they were cointerior. Both inside the parallel lines, but on the same side. And that means A plus 70 will have to add up to 180. So hopefully this has helped, and keep practicing. Thank you.